Hey, this is Matt Ertz, your Madison County Historian. We are still working to record interviews with businesses, organizations, and people that have been impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. We are very lucky today to have Michelle Ironside of Ironside Funeral Home. Michelle, thanks for being with us.
Sure, no problem.
Talk a little bit about, I think everyone has been to a funeral home one time or another, but talk a little bit about the process from your side before all this happened, what a funeral director kind of does to help families.
So basically, we are just there to take care of everything when somebody passes away. We are there to be their support, their guidance. A lot of people come in and they have never done this before, and so we're just there to walk them through each step. And really, we're just there for them to lean on and and be there when they need us. We see people at their worst, and we take them under our wing and try to guide them as best we can to start the grieving process to heal their hearts, basically.
Talk a little bit about the process itself. So you get notified by a hospital that someone has passed away. What does that process entail, again, pre-COVID?
Well, normally if, say, Oneida Hospital will contact us that they have somebody who passed away, we would go in, and a lot of times we'd go right to the floor and pick the deceased up from the bed. Now we barely can go inside the building. So we wouldn't normally have to wear masks or gloves. We would just walk in and we'd be able to hug the families. We would be able to talk to the nurses who took care of the deceased. And it was a lot more hands-on and involved than it is now.
And have your policies, once it's back in your facility, changed because of this? Or let me rephrase that. Are you actually getting COVID-19, people that have died of COVID-19?
So here personally at the Ironside Funeral Home, we have not, but my father and I do a lot of outside trade work for other funeral homes, and we do a lot of work for funeral homes in Rome, and it is very heavy. COVID's very prominent over in the nursing homes over in Rome, so we have handled quite a few COVID patients who have passed away, and it's a little tricky. I mean, we have to wear the full PPE. We wear the gown, the shoe coverings, the mask, the face shield, the head covering, gloves, and we limit the exposure to who can help. Who's in the preparation room with us. Normally, we just only allow funeral directors in there anyway, but we try to keep as many out as we can. And a lot of times I don't even let my father in. I'll just take care of it myself because he's older. So it becomes a little bit challenging. And then when we come home, we immediately change our clothes, put them in the laundry, go take a shower. I mean, there were some days I was showering 3 or 4 times a day. My hair was like hating me.
How, getting back to kind of the family side of it, how have you guys been able, because obviously with the ban right now on large group gatherings, I think you have to keep less than 10, including the employees of the funeral home.
Correct.
Families dealt with that? How have they been responsive-wise?
So the state came out and said we could actually just have immediate family.
Okay.
So we've been actually very fortunate to have very understanding families who are willing to, come in separate groups or do whatever they need to do. The challenging part for us has been when, somebody passes away at home and we have to go into this family's home and the widow is sitting next to her husband who they've been married 62 years and she doesn't want to let him go. And, I just want to hug her. I'm such a hugger and I just want to comfort her. And we can't do that now, so then for her to have to come into the funeral home with no support, just her children around her and be able to say goodbye to her husband it's heartbreaking really to just see them have that, there's so many people out in our wonderful community that want to come in and pay their respects and give her that support. And they just can't right now. They have to find different ways to do it. So.
Are you finding that people are delaying
Yes.
wakes and okay, they are. A lot of people
Oh, yeah.
are.
Yeah.
So if things get better and we hit stage 4 and things kind of open up to a level, do you anticipate having a huge swath for a month or two?
Oh, I would say yes. I know here we have a few families that are waiting to do services, and some of them, the person passed away in December or January, and they were going to wait anyway till April, May because the family was scattered all over, and they were going to wait until to do it in April or May. Well, now they're having to wait to do it in July or August.
That's a big if still, obviously.
Yeah, it is, and we're hoping that the governor comes out and says that we can at least have the immediate family plus 10 people, and to have some type of public calling hours so people can at least, we can limit who comes in, but still be able to do something for these families.
Some places have tried some form of drive-through wake. I know that's been somewhat controversial too.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about that process. I don't think you guys have done that.
Nope, and I don't think anybody in our area has done it. It's been more out towards the Syracuse area. I know somebody who was gone, and they said they just kind of drove by and waved to the family and knew that the family knew that they were there to support them. But I don't know. It's not something I'm hoping that the funeral industry goes into in the future. I don't.
And then that leads into another question. How will this change your profession? Because we've talked to teachers and they talk about bringing technology in, and we've talked to business owners and they talk about, you know, the distancing and how offices and a lot of people are going to wind up working from home in the future. Your guys, in a lot of ways, is the same as it was 100 years ago. I mean, there's some technological advances, but.
Right. We think it's either going to go one of two ways. This is either going to say, families are either going to say, well, this was awful. I never want to have a private service again. I want the public to be able to come in and support us and be there and be able to say goodbye. Or they're going to go the other way and say, oh, that was great. We just had a private moment at the funeral home for dad. And when mom passes, we're going to do the same thing. So it's going to change our business, I think, either for the one way or the other. I don't know which way is better, but and then it's going to, you know, it's going to change how I don't know if there'll be so much more hugging or kissing or, you know, shaking hands. How are we going to handle calling hours? Are we not going to let the family line up anymore? Are they just going to be mingled? You know?
I went to a wake in late February for a military veteran, and it was interesting. I remember I did two things towards the end, and I went to a concert at a very small venue. And I remember thinking in both of those cases, I don't think I'm ever going to experience something like that again. At least not, I mean, I probably stood in line for the wake for 45 minutes. And I remember thinking, I don't think I'm ever going to, I don't know how that's going to re-exist the same way.
I don't know either. I mean, I don't know. How are we going to keep 6 feet apart?
Yeah.
I mean, they're going to line up down the street and in the middle of winter. I just don't know how it's.
You know, you think about how grocery stores have stickers and stuff. I'm not sure that funeral homes are going to have that. I don't know if that'll work.
We don't have big enough facilities to do that.
Yeah. When remains are then sent to a burial, how do you know how the cemeteries are responding? I have a couple of them coming up, I hope, but do you guys, do they have to change how they do stuff?
We have been informed to disinfect the outside of the casket if the person deceased is COVID positive, or if they're going to the crematory to label the container that the deceased is COVID positive, so they could take the necessary precautions they need to. I don't know if there's necessarily anything different as the cemeteries are doing regarding digging the grave and filling it in and anything like that. But I just thinking of handling the casket over to the grave, and as it's lowered down, we try to, you know, limit the exposure, who's touching, you know, try to wear gloves, stuff like that.
So we'll switch gears for just a minute. Your business has actually been involved, I think, twice now.
Yes.
We've seen lots of different organizations organize different types of drives to help people that are struggling specifically with food a lot, but other things. You guys have come together with a few different places, and it started as a dairy, but you did one earlier this week. We actually talked to Charles, the Rome Sentinel reporter, earlier this week, and he referenced you did milk, bread, jam, other stuff, or?
So we had bread from Freihofers. We had yogurt from Chobani. We had milk and dip from Hood. And then we were able to find peanut butter. We weren't able to find jam, and we had string cheese from Kraft up in Lowellville. So
how did that come together?
So actually it was it was a funeral home in Syracuse did it to start with. And then I said to my dad, oh, we should do that. And then he's like, okay, how are we going to do that? We can't do it here at our facility. We're not big enough. We'll back up Main Street for hours. And I said, well, find a way, Dad. I think we need to give back to our community. And so he made some phone calls. My dad is very active in the Knights of Columbus here in Oneida. And yeah, so they had some connections to the Knights of people from Hood and from Chobani and Kraft. And so they were able to get those things together. And then we went to the mayor and said, we need somewhere to do this. Like, we don't want to block up city streets for that long. And my dad had the idea of doing it down on Stevens Street, which worked out wonderfully. Traffic moved right along. People hardly had to wait at all.
Now, just for folks that aren't familiar, Stevens Street is over by
Missoula Carpets.
Yep.
Yeah. It's that little side street that nobody ever uses. So it really worked out well. And we help families when they're at their worst. And right now families are at their worst. So it was just another way that we could give back to our community who has given so much to us over the years.
Do you know how many giveaways you did?
We think we helped 1,600 families just this last time alone.
Wow.
If our calculations are right. I mean, we had 2,500 pounds of peanut butter. Like, that's a lot of peanut butter.
It's a lot of peanut butter. Are you planning another one again, or kind of waiting and seeing?
I think we're going to kind of wait and see how things go in the reopening phase as people start hopefully getting back to work and the economy starts to pick up again. I think we're going to wait and see. I know the need was much greater the second time. I don't know if we served more or because it was more like media out there,
Yeah, it's a double-edged sword. You need the advertising, for lack of a better way to put it,
right?
Where it's happening. If you mentioned the not having the jelly, is there one thing you wish you could get that maybe could help? Or you guys are, we're really happy with what we had?
The second time we were really ecstatic with what we had. Families were so grateful, especially families with kids, and we handed them, a couple jars of peanut butter and 2 loaves of bread. And of course we wished we would have had the jam, but it just never made it onto the truck. So we do.
There's always the opportunity, and people are very grateful for what you're doing. Is there anything else you'd like to say to folks now before we head off?
My husband would hate me for saying this, but stay in. We're all in together. But really, honestly, I think we'll be okay. We'll get through this. It's just a bump in our road, and everything happens for a reason. I'm a big believer in it. I don't know what this reason is, but we'll get through it.
Michelle, thank you for taking the time. As stuff opens, maybe down the road, I will see if you want to do this again, just to see how it changed one more time. And thank you for doing the donations. Thank your father. I've known your father a very long time.
Yeah, absolutely.
And he probably could tell you some horrible hunting stories. But we hope to talk to you soon.
Sounds good.